We're going to get started, and welcome to the panel 7, Fostering the Future Librarians, Best Practices for Remote Internships in a Post-Pandemic Library. Hello, I'm Yoko Ferguson. I'm the cataloging and metadata librarian at the University of the District of Columbia. But previously, I was the head of cataloging at the City College of New York. And so very happy and excited to be part of the LACUNY Institute again and see some familiar faces and names in the audience.
Hello, I am Helena or Lena Marvin. I'm at the University of Missouri St. Louis, and I'm the Institutional Repository Librarian. Previously, I was the Government Documents Librarian at the City College of New York. So I too am thrilled to see a bunch of familiar faces among this crowd. In today's glorious presentation, we are going to be talking all about practicum internships and fostering future librarians in your library. We're going to talk about preparing for such an adventure, recruitment, selection, project-based learning, mentorship, assessment, evaluations, some lessons we learned, and then we'll get on to questions and discussion.
Please feel free to leave questions or comments during the presentation. We'll answer to them during the presentation or at the end. A little bit about our institutions where we work right now, and about the UDC. It's the only public university in the nation's capital. We're HBCU, Historically Black College and University, founded in 1851, originally as a teacher's college for Black women. Currently, we're serving about 4,000 students, and the majority of the student body consists of Black and Latinx students. We're a member of the Washington Research Library Consortium, which consists of 9 partner universities in the DC metropolitan area. And at the UDC, I started having interns in 2022 when I started working at UDC as the head of cataloging. And since then, I had 3 interns. Lena?
The University of Missouri St. Louis is part of a 4-school system in Missouri, and we're about 61 years old. It is as similar to City College as a 61-year-old Midwest university could be, similar commuter school. And I started having interns during the pandemic and a little bit into the post-pandemic era that we've entered, so from 2020 into 2022. So we're going to talk about preparing for interns, identifying the kind of activities you might want to do with them, and preparing documentation for them and for you. The biggest question is why have interns? So Yoko, why have interns?
Well, so it's from my own personal experience, but when I was in the library school, I gained all the hands-on cataloging experience, and through doing the practicums and then a part-time job in the library. And with those hands-on experience, I don't think I would have been able to land on the first professional, full-time job right after the library school. And then especially also most of cataloging and metadata jobs, even at the entry level, those hands-on experience is really key, and then mentioned on the job descriptions. And however, all the cataloging resources systems are subscription-based, and students usually don't get access to it. So I wanted to be able to offer that, especially because not everyone has resources or means to get those internship opportunities. And I also had wonderful mentors throughout my career. And then now being a mid-career librarian, I wanted to do the same for the fellow future librarians and give back to the profession, especially to the community of the marginalized group who are still not well represented in our field. And so those are the behind the reason why I wanted to have be able to offer internship in my library. And so now, Lena, what's your whys?
I was lonely during the pandemic. Right before shutdown, one of my colleagues who worked at the iSchool in the system, which is a town away, we were chatting, and I said, well, if you need extra work, I have it, because as the institutional repository librarian, all of my work is digitally based. And I was like, I've got extra work. And so I got a bunch of interns who would interact with me during the pandemic, and I'll talk a bit more about that as we move on. There's a lot of other benefits as ways to think about the benefits. So if you're starting from thinking about it as to why the interns would want to be involved, as Yoko mentioned, a lot of the tools are hard to get access to if you're not in a library. There's just transferring the knowledge that you get in school into action. So from knowledge into skills. Yeah.
And then they can get mentors who can be differences for their future job opportunities. And then also, yeah, so those are really beneficial to them, we think.
Whereas from the library's point of view, so there's both the point of view of the library and of myself as a librarian for mentorship. I really liked getting to reconceptualize the work, clarifying the goals for my interns, helped clarify the goals of my work for myself. But it was also just about getting difficult projects done. The students' needs come before the librarians' needs. So like making sure that this project isn't just like grunt work, but that it's, you know, something you can sink your teeth into as a young librarian.
For me, in addition to that, it means a lot to me that by supporting marginalized students, we can help increase the diversity of the field of librarianship, which it makes the field much stronger. And then also that such service to the profession can count for evaluation and promotion for as a mentor too.
So when you're identifying your projects, you have to be thoughtful about it when you're looking at what can be done in your library. So what was done in your library, Yoko?
So I had over 500 theses that need to be cataloged, you know, CLC connection and added to our Alma local catalog. And then so those are, we were able to do it remotely. So I turned that into the internship project. We also had other things, which is like updating Library of Congress authority records or reclassify harmful classifications that live inside of the library system, and then on the spine labels. But that involves with physical projects too, so that I'm putting aside right now. Another thing was revising and revisiting harmful archival descriptions in the catalog and in other digital formats we have. How about you, Lena?
So as the institutional repository librarian, I work with a lot of open access materials and trying to find what faculty on my campus had produced open access works and then showcasing them is a lot of what I was doing and still do. So having students help with navigating that kind of scholarly communications stuff. The other bit that I looked into was adding metadata and creating promotional materials for open educational resources, because kind of have a lot of those that need kind of more care taken to them after they're created and distributed. So when designing these activities, the hope is that you're meeting both the students and the library's needs. And it's a good idea to try and align what that work is with current job postings that are up for librarians. So when they're graduating, they'll be able to align what they did in your practicum with what they want to do. But it's also work they've got to be able to do somewhat independently, because if you have to hover over their shoulder all the time, I don't have time for that.
Another thing to think about is to think about activities that lend themselves to easily tracking how students are doing and showcase what they've done during and after the internship. So for me, cataloging, doing original cataloging, students can have OCLC records or URLs to the bib records they created, so they can use those for future references.
I had my project all digitally based where all the open access was, but also I had a project website that all of their activity logs, which we will be talking about shortly, went into. You could also leverage LibGuides to try and highlight this sort of work.
So for preparing documentations, the internship description and training materials and training plan or activity logs templates have been helpful to have it in mind before starting the internship. I put together this internship description that gives an overview of the project, and then learning includes learning outcomes, project overview, and qualifications, and working hours and durations, and location of work, which is remote, and then my contact information. I have the qualifications that the students are interested in cataloging, and they have taken or taken cataloging courses previously, because it is really designed to have students transfer their knowledge into actual practices. So that I put this together before reaching out to library schools and recruit new students. And having something written like this makes it easier to get approval of or inform my director what I'm up to. And then I can include this document in my portfolio for evaluation, tenure promotion as evidence too. So it becomes handy. And training materials, I prepare detailed step-by-step instructions with screenshots and samples. And we walk through all the steps together during the training sessions, but these will be helpful because interns will eventually work independently on their own time. Another thing I put together is activity log. I create a personalized one for each intern. This is just a shared Excel sheet and designed to record date activity and to leave comments and an answer just for each other, me and then the intern.
So like Yoko, my practicum students, they had learning outcomes that they needed to meet, but because they were kind of thrust out of their in-person practicums into a remote practicum, there were learning goals that were outlined, kind of required, and then I matched my activities to that. So it's a little bit backwards, but they also had activity logs and training materials. But since I didn't know I was going to get interns before getting them, my interns and I kind of co-created all of those materials. And I will show a bit of that off later. Getting your interns can look very different. I got mine through the Mizzou iSchool because they had to. They didn't have to go with me. I had informational interviews with them and emails before they decided that it was a good match.
Me, my first intern I found through APALA, Asian Pacific Librarians Association's mentorship program. And then the next two ones, I reached out to the library schools in this area and then did the interviews. For interview process, so after I sent out the internship description that we looked at earlier, I will request them their resumes and then invite them for interviews. Interview sessions, I would ask like when they're graduating or what types of library profession they're interested in, what types of libraries they're interested in working after the graduation, and cataloging courses taken or currently taking, and about the knowledge and experience with cataloging, like MARC records, LCSH, and so on, and why they're interested in the internship project. And then if they need to do that for practicum courses or just for interns. And so those are the things I would ask them during the interview, and also exchange, let them know, talk a bit about internship projects, including background and then what interns will be asked to do during the internship.
So I had interns who were in these different classes were located all over. Mine are in red, and part of what's great about a remote internship is I had people in Washington and Oregon and different time zones all working with me.
I had three, and they are where they lived. But one students moved from one state to another to a different time zone, but it didn't really matter because it's a remote internship.
So project-based learning is really helpful at like accommodating the needs of your students and fitting it to your own work. So I think of there as being two steps, and I don't really illustrate here, but I'm going to say it again. I love that there's onboarding and training, and they get all mixed up at the same time. So training is the time when the interns are working on the projects, but it's when you have time to like build trust and ask questions, and they ask questions.
Like I see it takes time to train students, interns, but it's a perfect opportunity to build trust and create a safe and comfortable space to ask questions and then make mistakes. And then also explain goals and verify everything is working okay, and in practice that work.
So both Yoko and I had a similar strategy on this, where first we would walk them through, this is the steps of what you're going to do, and you like screen share through that process, and then you go, okay, did you understand? Now you do it. And they would screen share and walk through the process.
So when to meet, I always have one intern at a time, so the making the time that finding out the time to meet is not as complicated as Lena's. But we meet usually like once or twice a week, weekly in the beginning, and then later meet as needed after that. And then went to work whenever the students can, and checking in, we did that once in a while by email.
I was pretty strict in that I had to chat with my students every 4 hours of their work. So maybe they only worked on Tuesday and then Thursday, so they'd meet with me at the end of their Thursday 4 hours of whatever. But I didn't want to try and schedule that because I had multiple interns at once, which I don't really recommend, but it can be fun. I used a tool called youcanbook.me, and it's very, very helpful for, I don't have to know their schedule. We don't have to talk about it. They just schedule when they can talk to me, and it just links to my calendar. So this is how I tried to describe my institutional repository library, as this very hungry beast that just wants more and more open access works. So that's a Halloween werewolf monster, royalty free from Pixabay if you want it for yourself. And the main goal is we want more open access from these faculty members. We need to look at all of their bibliography, check each item, use Sherpa Romeo to figure out, can we use this? Can we upload a publisher PDF? Can we upload an author manuscript? Can we get an author manuscript? But the main bit is each of these tasks are doable, they're reviewable, and they're repeatable. So that's where the learning happens, because you're doing the same thing over and over again. You're turning a widget, but I'm able to see that on their activity log and by talking to them whenever they hit trouble in this cycle.
For me, our goal is to catalog e-theses, electronic theses, and add them to OCLC Connection and ALMA, our consortium catalog. And we had over 500 of those, and interns learn about cataloging theses and mark fields while doing the repeatable process of cataloging. But each item is slightly different, and so that allows them to be creative and then apply what they've learned. So after discussing goals and learning about interns' interests, I put together this internship project plan. So in addition to the main project, which is cataloging e-theses, interns may be interested in other things like creating the Library of Congress author records or working with digital archives. So within my capacity, I try to incorporate their interests into the project plan to make sure that they'll get a wide variety of hands-on experience during the internship, and even if they're a bit out of scope of the original goal, and so that they could add them to their regimen. So this is the sample internship project plan. It has all the links to the instructions sheet sheet, and then all the internship activity log. So it makes it easier for them to access all those shared drives and files.
So when Yoko showed me this, I was like, oh, you have a digital portal. You have a shared document that can be changed. It's an orientation spot. It's like where you land before you work on your internship. I had the same thing, but mine, so that counts as like living documentation, which I think is an incredible strength in librarianship, but also in these internships. So my living documentation, the activity log, the portal to get everything started, was on this homepage, which I think I can drop the link into chat if anybody wants to look at it. So this I put together as a space for the interns to kind of land and do their work. So this is all an updating space. This is an example of an activity log for one of my students. So instead of a spreadsheet, it's just a line per like amount of work. So they'd say when it happened, when they worked, what they did, how long they worked, and just repeat that forever. On one activity log. So they'd also include questions, and we tried to also get answers into this log in case anyone ever came across this site and wanted to use it.
For me, my activity log is a classic shared Excel sheet. We use it to record hours and activity and stats, and then also to communicate. And then we add or delete columns as we go to make it most useful for both of us.
If I had been smarter, my activity log would have been a little bit more table-based with its own column for time, because being able to calculate time and other statistics is really, really powerful.
So training materials, which I prepped in the beforehand, was also living documentations that I let the students know that these are for them, to make most useful for them. So they can make changes, color, or change orders. And then sometimes like calendaring systems get updated or retire, and then interns help update the instructions accordingly.
My training materials were written by the students. So I had all of these students over the course of the time of 2 years. And if someone wrote something from scratch, it would just be their name. But if they edited other people's, you could just add more and more authors to it, and they would edit each other's. They would also get decommissioned if it got a full overhaul. So all of those materials are available on the website in the hopes that if the students want to show off what they've done, they can show their activity log, and you can click to see the authorship of all of the documents they touched on the workflows that we put on this website. So I think my activity log came a lot out of the design of Critical Friendship, which was a chapter that Yoko and I wrote together. This is also available to all of you from the CUNY academic works. So here's the link to that in chat. But Critical Friendship is a peer activity for mentorship, for like peer mentorship that Yoko and I did. And it does convert well into the hierarchical mentorship that includes supervision of a practicum. So mine was during the pandemic. We were all working from home, and a lot of people had pets. So this is how I illustrated that while I am your supervisor, I'm just one of your supervisor. We also had pet supervisors. So we like made this cool little pet supervisors page. Very cute.
For mentorship and supervision, we think that the similar but slightly different. Mentorship really applies the whole librarianship as a whole, while supervision is more project specific. And as far as like a mentorship goes, during and post internship, librarian can help assist writing and crafting internship experience on resumes and cover letters. also help with preparing for job interviews or for job openings or webinars that might be of their interest, or share some professional listservs, associations, or job sites, and talk about different librarian jobs or help connect with other librarians, and then to get more broader understanding of librarianship.
Whereas being a supervisor has more to do with whatever specific project you're working on. So one aspect of being a supervisor to students is every so often we'd run into a problem where I'd be like, I don't know the solution to this. I can admit that. I can do the research and you can do the research with me. And it's kind of a neat space to have that collaborative work. Or sometimes I just be like, oh no, this is what you should be doing because I just know and I could explain it. There's a lot of very specific terminology in librarianship and a lot of acronyms. So helping students navigate all of those is really helpful. And just being able to spot problems. I was always astonished at how students couldn't quite see the whole picture at the beginning of the internship, and then by the end they were totally on it and like able to understand. It's great. Part of being a supervisor is being flexible. One of my students had her laptop break during the internship and was not able to get a new one. And most of our work really required having a full computer. But since they did have a tablet, we kind of pivoted to what kind of materials can be created. And they shifted to working a lot on the training materials in particular. And it went really well. And then once they were able to get a laptop again, getting back into the deeper work was good, but there's also just technical difficulties. I had backup readings for if our system went down and my student said, I don't have anything to do. I'd be like, you do, here's a bunch of readings, go try that. And find more readings, share readings as a kind of backup activity.
Just to have a backup one. I didn't think about that, but I go keep that in mind, just in case. Yes. Like my case, system didn't go down, but got updated or retired, and so I had to change my the way to train students. So and students also moved. Like one of my students moved from one state to another state during the internship, and then changed the time zone. So but it's a remote internship, and so it can be flexible too. And what's important, most important is yes, it's be flexible and kind, and then understanding what they're going through.
So assess
and evaluations. Go ahead.
I think the activity log is the superpower of assessment and evaluation because you can look at all their hours, their activities, see their accomplishments, and dig into the questions and answers. But there's also I really like how Yoko did evaluation stuff.
So the activity log very helpful to do self and project evaluation, and then where the project is going and how much you were able to complete with the students' help. But this is a reflection piece that I request students to write up at the end of the internship, and then to include their name and library school and briefly talk about what they've done in this cataloging internship and what they liked about it, and then what they gained. And this is just a sample of reflection piece from my previous intern. One was shared on the departmental newsletter, and another one was shared on the association's website, where I served as a mentor and through the mentorship program. And these reflection pieces from the interns really help to evaluate and improve the current internship, and also can be used as evidences of my service in tenure and promotion portfolios in the future. And I also have exit conversation with interns, and I just ask them what they learned, what they gained, what they enjoyed the most, and hopefully those will align the initial goals and interests they had in the beginning. And also I'll ask them if there's anything that they wish they learned but they didn't, and if you have any questions or suggestions to improve the internship for the future interns. So those have been very helpful for me.
I was a little bit less formal. I asked for a conclusion summary, and some of my practicum students did not provide it because they only had either 90 or 130 hours with me. And if they were trying to wrap up the last of whatever part of the project they found most interesting, they maybe wouldn't write this up. And that was a mistake on my part. But I also asked them to write out how they were going to describe the practicum for their resume, and I reviewed that. And the folks who did this and their activity logs, all available on the website that I shared the link before on. So there's a lot of lessons learned and like suggestions. A common challenge is just figuring out what your project is, defining the scope, but also making sure that it is beneficial to both the student and the library, but more so the student than the library. It's also hard to find time to set aside for interns. I found letting them book the time was a lot easier for me, but I'm kind of comfortable with on-the-fly meetings. I recommend one intern and not many. It's easier to focus and keep track of them that way.
Recruiting students, and especially reaching out to the BIPOC and then marginalized students, is one of the challenges I have, and I'd like to reach out to them. I don't really know the best way to reach out to them, but really welcome and appreciate any suggestions if you have. Recruiting is one thing, but retention and keeping that attention and interest of interns is another challenge too. I had one intern who disappeared after we went through the training sessions, and so maybe something happened to the student. The things happen, but keeping them is another common challenge.
I had a student who, even though they were kind of locked into this course for credit that they were in, who still ended up needing to take a break, and they like withdrew and re-enrolled in the class later, but it worked out. But yeah, the keeping them together, but also just the technical challenges of a fully remote internship are not to be ignored. It's hard to make sure that they have everything they need, especially in terms of authentication and permissions to get into the stuff. I'm the admin on a lot of the software that's used. It's a lot web-based, so I was able to set them up, but that can be very challenging.
The software too gets updated and retire during the internship too, and the mentor needs to be flexible and then be able to offer the plan B.
So you've heard all about preparation, recruitment, project-based learning, the mentorship versus supervision, assessment, and our lessons learned. We are now open to questions. Do you have a question?